we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining us for the Sending for Search information webinar. We're going to start off with some quick introductions, and then we're going to just jump into some of the first questions. For any attendees, you should be able to submit a question, and we'll try to get to them as we go through the webinar. So real quick, I'm Ed Zunzunegui. I'm the head of the Customer Success Group, and with my colleague here, Jeff Twardzik, we're going to be helping everyone navigate the webinar. But Jeff?
Yeah, Jeff Twardzik, original founder, president here at Q. Also, primary job is heading up the SME team. So came out of healthcare, did 11 years in healthcare as a supervisor, manager, director. And it was the pains that I saw in that space. And then our SME team has expanded to be in other industries also. So we take great pride in feeling the pains that are really out there in the real world and trying to solve for them with Q.
Okay, Bryce?
Yeah, my name is Bryce Hall. I'm the Technical Services and Environment Manager at Seneca Foods in Baraboo, Wisconsin.
All right, thank you, Bryce. Glenn?
Good morning, all. Glenn Patrick, Director of Facilities for UP Health System Portage in Hancock, Michigan. Been in the job for 24 plus years, and some of the challenges, hopefully I can share some information, the things that I faced over the years.
Thank you. And Joe?
My name is Joe Weickert. I'm the manager of facilities here at Maple Grove Hospital in Maple Grove, Minnesota. I've got about 18 years of healthcare maintenance and facilities, and worked closely with Jeff when we were at the Aspirus system.
Okay, thank you, Joe. All right, so kind of our first question here is establishing, I think we all know the pains that are around with dealing with information and finding information. So this first question is going to be to Bryce, since he's coming from a little bit of a different industry in manufacturing. But how are those pains, Bryce, dealt with? And if you want to first establish what are those, and then talk about a little bit of how you deal with them, or how you're looking to deal with them, and just finding information, and what's the old way to do it?
Yeah, so in our industry, we have a lot of specifications, and just being in production, we have to control our production records and just storage in general. So one of the most frustrating for me things is keeping the most current copies of specs and production records, forms that they use to track this information, keeping those from using the wrong form. There's a lot of versions of forms that we go through. We have to update them frequently. And then the difficulty of access, especially for newer personnel, is kind of a struggle. We see a lot of junior maintainers and QC personnel, especially people that are going right through that journeyman program. They have difficulty accessing what they need to in a very swift manner. Everything that we have is generally in a shared drive on our computer base, and then they would print out physical forms or archive where they need to from there. So not having a well organized space for all these forms is kind of a challenge for them. So they're going through 15 to 20 folders before they actually are able to find what they need to find to do, if they're doing a QC check, or they're trying to look for a spec or a work instruction to figure out how to do something. It's taking them more time to find that. And then just storage space. As I mentioned, our L drive, or our shared drive, it only has so much limited space on it. So we're constantly having to upgrade that to get more and more space. So that kind of limits us for that. And then just a general audit trail, knowing when we're updating those forms, knowing when employees need new and updated forms, keeping all that in line is a big problem that we're hoping to solve.
Okay, thanks, Bryce. And Glenn and Joe, I know I've had the privilege and honor to visit both of your facilities, and it seems like a lot of places we go into, we see these rooms that have the shelves with the binders, or plan rooms. how often do you, if you want to talk a little bit about that pain, and how often do your teams utilize that? And is it easy for them kind of to search for some of that information? Glenn, if you want to start first and just talk a little bit about that. Oh, you might be on mute, Glenn.
Sorry about that. Yeah, we're guilty as charged with the plan room and the binders everywhere. We're not as advanced with everything on shared drives like Bryce had mentioned. There's a lot of paperwork that we have. And with the drawings and trying to locate certain things that we're working on for repairs or new projects, locating them on drawings can be a challenge, because are those paper drawings as built? Are they, did every contractor that, excuse me, worked in the building put all that information on there? So it's a real challenge trying to find all of the current information. And in the binders, it's not near as bad. It's a little better organized for us. But then just the paper hard copies, it's just the wear and tear. And before you know it, pages are falling out. Do you have everything? Digitizing everything in a much more organized fashion would be beneficial.
Yeah, Joe, do you want to talk a little bit about that? I mean, we've heard, some nightmare stories in bigger facilities of having to walk from one end to the building to the other to get back to the plan room, or to get back to, where the binders are. What are your takes on that? Or what are your thoughts?
So to build off a little bit of what Bryce brought up in specs, right? Having the specs attached right at an asset, right off an asset tag that we can bring up on our mobile device is huge. Back to right, where do you store and house all that stuff? One of the benefits of going with QModo, and we figured out forms right now, to Glenn's point, I am bringing forms into QModo, which gives me that digital imprint. And then to the floor plans was an unexpected joy right now. And that probably here gets used more than anything else. Right, the guys are up on the floor, we got a leak, where's the valve? To Glenn's point, we're maybe not quite there on how updated the as-built are, but it certainly shrinks down the search area to find that valve right from the location, and not having to come all the way back down to the basement to go to the print room.
And then I think, Joe, the stuff that we've worked with you and done in your daily rounds for your mechanical rooms, I think one of the things that seems like a huge victory is the new employees that you've brought in the past 6 months or so, how quickly they become oriented with the building, right? A couple of weeks, maybe a week, whatever it was that your veteran guys were keeping them around, but having all of that information, what I'm supposed to look at inside of that mechanic room, what does that equipment actually do? I could at any moment go to an asset profile and it would give me like what it supplies and all of that information. And then the videos that go along with it. So, your seasoned guys, including yourself, that made the videos that are so easy to watch, right? Like, I'm not quite sure what that was, and I can just watch a quick video on that step. I'd love to have you talk a little bit more about that, but that seems like that's really helped out in your environment.
Yes, and again, that was an unexpected. As we brought you guys in, we didn't realize we could do or use that, and you guys have been huge in creating that. I can use the example. I brought 2 new afternoon guys in right in the middle of building the QModo and building the daily rounds forms to go through. And where my senior techs helped build that, my 2 new guys came in and trained in a quarter of the time on morning rounds. They went out 2 mornings with help, and pretty much after that they had it in their hand, and each step talked them through what they needed to do, and in an order that kind of universally set how we want to do them rounds. So instead of instead of all 6 guys having their own special way of doing rounds, and that's okay. When you go to train someone in, you got 6 different ways to do it to a new employee. It's now kind of leveled the playing field, even with my seasoned techs. They are now getting accustomed to doing the rounds in a certain order as QModo steps them through it. And I'm getting that valuable information digitally when I need it. I don't have to go out to a binder and dig through 362 pieces of paper to pull up that specific day's information.
Great points there, Joe. If I could just add to that a little bit, we're a little bit further behind in the implementation of QModo, but we're real excited about the opportunity that it's going to give, like you said, a lot of the younger and the journeyman technicians that we have. I just don't think they get enough repetition with working on certain pieces of equipment. And just like somebody in sports needs repetitions to become better at it, you can skip through a lot of that by using the QModo app so that they can see their colleague, an experienced colleague doing it. So we're real excited about that opportunity for our young guys. Like I said, they just don't have the experience that the veterans do. And I think it's going to be a great move for us.
Yeah, Glenn, I was actually going to bring up like what we did with Joe. And I know it's that way, just so everybody knows, when I got into healthcare, Glenn brought me into healthcare actually. And it was a great experience working underneath him. But so I know a lot of his guys that are still there, and there's certain individuals that are really good at certain things, right, Glenn? I mean, they just know it inside and out. So trying to get that knowledge out of their heads to share with everybody else, and everybody's got kind of had a specialty, if I remember right, like this guy was really good at that and that guy was really good at that. And then if you could put that all together for that junior guy, he's just leaps and bounds ahead of what it was in the past.
And everyone teaches differently, and some of our experienced technicians are maybe not the greatest of teachers, but the younger generation and the technicians that we have seem to, just like everyone at that age, they learn by looking at the videos on YouTube or whatever on their smart devices. And this is just right up their alley. They can look at a smart device, they can see how Roger does something, and boom, they can follow that, and they're a lot more comfortable with it.
Yeah, no, that's really good.
I'm going to add to that a little bit because we're still in the process here. And so at the get-go, we did videos on some of the major equipment as part of rounds, so my junior techs could also bring that video up. Now I'm hammering into them every time you touch a piece of equipment, and every time you have that aha moment, oh, I did this 4 years ago, what do I do? If that question comes out of your mouth, you need to make a video. And now I have that also for my junior new techs that are coming in. And part of the training quickness with this is just been right. I've trained a lot of maintenance techs in over the years, and it's been a 2, 3, 6 month process to even get them comfortable to go do daily rounds properly. It was literally 3 weeks. Right? And these 2 new guys can be let alone and go do what they need to do. So
Wow.
That's huge.
Yeah. And especially in that environment, right? In that hospital environment. And you're for sure too, Bryce, like compliant in what they're doing. They've got the right document for sure in their hands. Did they walk out of that office with the wrong thing to go to the vacuum pump? It's right there. No, this is for the vacuum pump because you scan the QR code on that system and it pulled it up for me, so making sure that everybody's doing the right thing when they're out in the field too. I'm sure that feels good.
Well, and it makes it uniform, right? The video aspect of everything, if you have a physical SWI or a SOI or standard work instruction, and you're reading it step by step, each person can interpret each of those steps differently and in a different order and with different priority or sense of urgency. When you have a video showing, it dictates, I tighten this or I loosen that, or I do X, Y, and Z before I do A, B, and C. It puts it more into perspective for the people watching that video. And then the other thing that we've kind of we've learned just in the trial of QModo is that the actual operations of what we're putting on the SWI change a lot more frequently than we realize. Our standard in Seneca is every 3 years minimum, we update every one of our SWIs or standard work instructions that we have in-house. I would say probably there's like 10 off the top of my head that I could think of that we probably changed just with the video side of things 4 or 5 times in the last year, because, you know, someone forgot to add this, so then they add this little snippet into the video, or they add, you know, they forgot about this first step that, you know, could be critical to how the entire operation is set up. So having a visual instruction is, in my opinion, paramount, because people learn visually and hands-on, and just having that visual aspect is part of the key to success, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And Glenn would know that was the original idea, because I literally, when I was working with him, I went out and looked for Alexa or YouTube for maintenance guys. That's where this whole thing started. I'm like, somebody has to have done this, and no one had done it at that time, you know, and so that the visual part is big.
So we had initially done some training with the old camcorder over the shoulder from 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And you know, the old VCR tapes are no longer working. And so I think it evolved great, Jeff, into the app that you guys are developing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not even the videos aren't limited to just what your technicians are doing. You know, we can get the videos from, say you had a new high efficiency boiler put in, whoever that mechanical contractor that came in generally makes a how-to video for you. So we can take that video, get it into QModo, segment it out. So all I want to know is how to change it from propane to, or natural gas to propane. That's, you know, so we segment it out. So you're not a 15-minute video. I'm trying to search for that piece. You just get to that piece. And then also the manufacturers have a ton of videos out there. One of the stories I always bring up is going into Michigan Tech and finding a Danfoss drive, supply drive, that was in error, and scanned the barcode that was on there, came up with this error 38, and it showed you exactly what to do right from Danfoss. There was a quick video that you could watch, and went through this sequence of events, and the drive fired back up in probably 90 seconds to 2 minutes. So, you know, so that information is out there too, you know, and what we're doing is just put that all in one place that's easy to search, which kind of brings me back, like Bryce, listening to you talk about the share drive. You know, our theme here is kind of like everybody has that box of stuff, you know, and my box of stuff was always literally a box of paper, you know, that you're ripping through and you're trying to find. I know it's in here someplace. So everybody put that on share drives or zip drives or however else. It's still a box of stuff, right? Like you can't go into that share drive and find stuff real easily, right? So even though it's all electronic now, it's still the box of stuff that's really hard to find that, you know, and it's just shifted to a different source, you know. So
and we literally have a folder in our share drive that says other, and it's anything under the sun that if no one knows where to put something, it goes in there, and no one's responsible for trying to organize that and put it in its correct place. And you know, I could take the liberty to do it, but then everybody that goes to that other tab that knows that it's in that other tab is going to be like, well, where did it go? And you know, there's a learning curve in, you know, explaining how to search through that share drive. And you know, it's a huge pain in my butt when I hear people, well, I can't find this form. Well, it's right here. Or, you know, then I go to look for it, it's not there because somebody moved it. You can't figure out who moved it and to where. And then you either have to start the form over again, or and it becomes a cascading effect. It really does.
Yeah, and it sounds like technology progresses, right? We went from paper now to share drives, and that seems to be where we're helping a lot of our customers is take whatever they had either on paper or share drive and move it into, you know, into the cloud. As we're sharing stories, Jeff and I were at another potential customer where they were showing us that they had a lot of manuals online, but on a share drive. And this user actually joked about we counted the clicks. It took 10 clicks just to get to the folder that was then alphabetical for each manual. So you had to know the name of the manual, whether it was a train and was it first labeled with a train or as an air handle to then find your manual. Right.
Yeah, I wish 10 clicks was all it took for us. I mean, I'm not joking when I say 25 to 30 clicks for a lot of the stuff, especially that I deal with when it comes to specs, because each one of our facilities has a share drive, right? So we have 19 facilities. If I have to go look at something at our parent facility in Janesville, Wisconsin, I have to go, that's several clicks just to get to that. And then I'm 10 more clicks deep just to get to the specs folder. And then whatever spec I'm looking for there, is a couple more clicks. So, I mean, it's constant clicking, and my trigger finger gets very tired after a while.
And we're so used to, right, being able to search for things at Google, whether it's on our personal lives, and get to it in a lot less clicks than that. And we want to bring that to our work environment. Kind of blending a couple questions together here, but how do you see some of, especially now, Joe, you've gotten the system operating. How do you see the older folks kind of taking to it? We can see that we've definitely seen a trend where some of the younger staff, it's second nature to them to grab their phone to do something, right? How do you see that, or the older folks doing it? And I'll open it up to everyone. Maybe we'll start with Joe. But then do you see them reverting back to the old ways, or do you see them kind of starting to move forward? And how do you change that behavior then?
Well, we're gonna kind of back up to what we were just talking about. So also part of manuals is, what did the specific person name that manual when they parked it? So my older folks that knew where to go in the file drawer or into the shared drive to find it, and knew where to find it, to the point of 4 or 5 clicks away or standing over a drawer trying to dig it out, now can just go scan a barcode at the piece of equipment and that manual comes up for them. So where I've hit a little bit, Ed, back to your question, the senior techs don't like change, but they're also not oblivious to easier. So I have found, right where I had some huff and gruff from some of the senior techs, I catch them using it almost more than some of the junior techs, because it is just that much easier, right? They don't stop at my office anymore to open the drawer. They go right to the equipment, they barcode scan it, and everything's right there for them, and they're loving that.
Yeah,
The problem I'm having is getting them to make videos. That is being a little bit of a tough challenge. Right, in the heat of the moment, stop, take a breath, and make a video. So we also have that information at our fingertips, and that's being a little more challenging with the senior engineers than it is with the junior engineers.
Yeah, Joe, I would agree with you on all of that. We're fortunate to have one of our senior guys that likes the limelight. So he's been our main guy in all of these. But I think the other part about the senior technicians that they enjoy is it allows them to really, like the one gentleman I mentioned, he feels very proud that he's able to share his input, and it's going to be there for posterity for maybe a couple of generations of different young technicians that come through. And he's a very knowledgeable guy, and he enjoys sharing that information. And then it also, the senior guys like the opportunity to change the way it's shaped, or it's like providing them input, just like we all want to empower people by giving them an opportunity to provide information. This is a great tool for that, where they can really make their mark on the organization by being able to input the way things are done.
Yeah. And I think Joe, I think you and I were talking, sometimes you don't, you just don't have time to take out the phone. Okay, water's flying all over the place. Hey, Glenn, can you hold my phone so we can make a video of this while I'm doing this? So I think you guys were in the middle of something, Joe, where you were 4 or 5 guys around a situation, and finally one guy raises his hand and goes, I think I got it, and put it all together, and you guys did it, and you said, hey, we should have taken a video of that. You can retro back and go, okay, this is when this happens, and kind of walk through that. That's really easy to do too.
Yeah, and that is how we did go make a video on that. And when the vacuum pump, or when the RO system does this, you need to look at, right, that solenoid valve first. So in the heat of the moment, it wasn't happening, but yes, we did circle back after. Yeah. And I did impress upon my team that it doesn't have to be in the heat of the moment, but we have to go back and make that video, or We don't have it.
Yep.
I came from a system. I came from a hospital that all maintenance techs did all. Right, our whole team at that hospital was trained to pretty much touch and do all. We all had our little bit of specialties, but that was kind of the mentality. Coming here to Maple Grove, it was literally, I'm the boiler guy and that's all I'm going to do. And then it was, I'm the air handler guy and that's all. And I don't find how we work cohesively with that kind of system. So QModo is helping me now put even information into a seasoned vet who's been my air handler guy now can go work on the boiler because he has that information at the touch of his phone to be able to work through that boiler problem if he's the guy on call that day, or right, it's his weekend to work. So
Yeah, even empowering your employees to get through the moment, right, Joe? Whatever that moment is, it's 2 o'clock in the morning and it's really hitting the fan. And Glenn, you have to come in. That's going to happen. But that half-hour ride before you get there, I could probably mitigate a lot of things that make this better in the future. You know, so if that's shutting off a valve, or if that's, I know exactly where that power is coming from, and I can go shut that down, or there's gas, whatever that is. You know, like Ed and I were in Glenn's facility a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things Glenn brought up was the power. So we actually took his single line diagram. You can pull out his single line diagram now, and on the interactive maps, click on any one of those. It's a picture of the box, shows where it's at on the map, and it has the panel schedule right in there. So just a lot easier to follow down through all that stuff when I just don't know. I mean, it's just information overload for those guys. So when I'm just not sure, I can always turn there and at least take one step forward before the cavalry walks in the door.
Yeah, I may be jumping the gun a little bit because Ed might be asking this later, but you had mentioned, yeah, when you're driving in a crisis situation, we had a situation like this quite a while ago, but it was a Sunday and I just happened to be at work, which was fortunate because we had a sprinkler system during right after a construction project. All of a sudden, a sprinkler had let loose in the radiology department, and the water was building up, and we were in danger of losing a couple of X-ray machines. And I fortunately kind of knew where the valves were to shut off, but the people that were here that day did not. And so one of the things that we're expanding into QModo with is a drawing that they can have on their little tablet that they carry with us that'll have critical system controls, whether it's electrical or it's plumbing or mechanical, so that we can, in an emergency, we can turn those off and not do further harm. So we're real excited about that concept for our guys.
Part of a correction, Glenn, we created here. I was forced by our regulatory to do Friday checks on specifically the sprinkler valves, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now we have a Friday round sheet that tells us where to go to check that valve and primarily what that valve does. And so now weekly, at least my staff is right putting eyes on that valve for that floor or that wing. And that's just going to help in the future, to your example.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, we've
Your
implemented the
muscle
same
memory,
thing.
Your
Yeah,
muscle memory knows where to go because you go and look at it every Friday.
yeah,
Now it's part of that daily rounds or weekly rounds form.
yeah. We've had to implement the same thing, but I think even in a moment of crisis, when that panic sets in, there's another resource, particularly for young people, that we all just agreed to are used to looking at something digital, and they can find that. So there's there's a lot of good things to come out of it.
And Bryce, question for you. I know we've talked a lot about videos. I know with your facility, you've got a lot of obviously knowledge in the maintainers that are there, but I know you also use subcontractors to come in. And to Jeff's points, you know, they probably leave you with some information, but you know, we've talked about, you know, how do you take that information and make it more viable, and perhaps video being that one of those options. But with a lot of your production facilities, I've had also the opportunity to see it. It's a little bit older equipment that only some specialty people know how to maintain at some point. So you want to talk a little bit about that and what you're envisioning there?
Yeah, I mean, we have some production equipment that's 1950s, 1960s, and there's only 10 people in the country that work on those. Being able to either video conference them in visually if they can't make it physically here, or just have them kind of do a video. So if it's something that our maintainers, say on a coil line or on a coater oven line, that they're able to do without, or with the knowledge without the contractor, then we should capture that. The other thing is when a contractor leaves, they give us basically either a handwritten note that we attach to a work order, or we just jot down notes as management and try to put it in like a meeting minutes. You can only capture so much of that in words. It's more beneficial to see what they did or understand what they did, either in a prescribed form, or better yet, a video, and having that documentation speak for itself. And then just to back up on the video stuff, being able to capture that tribal knowledge, we've seen a great deal of our senior people in Seneca starting to slowly retire, and it's starting to add up and compile, where a lot of people in our industry are saying, well, seamer mechanics they used to be extremely valuable, and now they're even more valuable. And I would probably be willing to bet that just the couple seamer mechanics that we have in Baraboo, or even just the couple seamer specialists that we have across Seneca, could go toe to toe with any of in the country or the world, just because of they're the only ones left. Capturing that knowledge that they have is paramount, in my opinion, because if once they leave, you might get them for a couple years as a contractor, but once they decide to retire, they're gone. That knowledge is gone with them. And if there's no way to at least absorb a little bit of that tribal knowledge, and that knowledge that they've absorbed over the 40, 50 years that they've been in the industry, as it's evolved to where it is now, I think that's a massive waste of potential for our people to learn.
And just to give folks context, that Seneca plant makes cans for a lot of the growers or the canners. And what is it, Bryce? You up to 1.3 billion cans a year, or is it gone up from there?
Yeah, over the last 3 years, I think 2019 we did about 1.1 billion cans, and then this year we're projected for about 1.4 billion. And we're expanding. We're adding 2 more can assembly lines in the near future, in early 2024. So we need that much more people with that much more experience, and
right.
We're bringing in more people, but we're having almost the same amount leave, and those people that are leaving are supposed to be doing the training, or they're supposed to be passing on their knowledge to help us progress our junior maintainers along that same path. But just the lack of being able to capture that information, or just capture the junior and senior maintainers together so that they can pass that information, is starting to dwindle, and we're slowly starting to lose that, and eventually we will. And I'm sure everybody's kind of in that same pattern. It's the baby boomers, they're starting to leave, and they were the biggest generation that we had up until the one that's supposed to be coming in, but they've had so much experience with anything from hospitals maintenance to what we do in the cannery or at our can plant where we make the cans. So just being able to capture that, and especially in an easy to understand for especially my generation and younger generations, visually, I think is just paramount. It's a huge boon in our industry, and I'm sure others.
Yeah, and that line goes down. We've seen that line moving. It's moving a lot of cans, and when they go down, it impacts that 1.4 billion. You got to get it back up fast.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What are some of the other, what are some of the other tools or processes, let's say, that you guys are thinking about implementing around information itself? and I'll open that up to anybody. And that can not necessarily have to be a tool, but again, it could be a process or just something that you want implemented in or you're thinking about.
Well, generally, just to step in here, you know, we have 4 different departments that manufacture the cans in a warehouse. We have a coil line, an oven line, an oven coater line, and then a press line that makes the ends, and an assembly line that makes the cans. If each of those lines can have a specific consolidated information system or a portal where I go up to the coil line as a junior maintainer and I want to know, you know, I scan a QR code and then I get the manuals, I get the electrical diagrams, I get the specification sheets, I get the, you know, environmental data sheets, the safety data sheets, you know, everything's at my fingertips immediately without having to sift through 40 different folders to find each of those individual things. That right there has saved you know, an uncountable amount of time just to have that access right at your fingertips and consolidate by equipment. I think that you know, consolidating by department is how we do it now, where each individual department can have, you know, we have 8 assembly lines and we probably have, you know, 2 of them that are the same in each. So, you know, we typically have about 4 different types of assembly lines that are running. So just being able to differentiate between those and the different safety programs, lockout, tagout programs, you know, there's different specs for different size cans, stuff like that. You know, it really helps our process and saves a lot of valuable time.
Okay. Thanks.
I'll,
Joe,
I'm gonna say the thing we've been working on next with QModo has been regulatory and compliance, right? Having a parking spot for certain regulatory and certain compliance issues. And I would imagine even a Bryce at Seneca has a piece of that also. We are sometimes so regulatory filled and compliance filled, and it's in binders, it's in folders, it's on this shared drive, that shared drive. So part of what we've been doing with the forms at this point is loading in forms that are more compliance driven, and it's making a spot digitally for them. And that's kind of been what we've been working on lately here at Maple Grove. One thing in the back of my mind moving forward is how do we bring some of our policy and procedures forward to that also. So right there is a policy out there that says what we need to do if we lose medical gas. Now, how can I bring that forward to their fingertips also as they lose that medical gas, right? Oh, I need to do A, B, and C, then jump into how do I do A, B, and C. So just a couple thoughts I've had on how we go forward with some of this.
And I think, go ahead, Brian.
No, go ahead, Jeff. You're good.
No, I was just gonna say, you know, and I'm focusing on healthcare just because that's the world I came out of, but I know this touches your world too, Bryce. But a lot of the forms that you try to find, like above ceiling work that I'm gonna do, or if I'm gonna penetrate a smoke wall, or all of those different things that you're supposed to really fill out a form for, right? And how often does that really happen? How often is that documented? And most of the time it's because I don't know where it's at. I don't want to bother Joe again and ask him where that's at. And he's going to go, you know where it's at because I told you 2 months ago where that is. And how do I fill that out? And I'm not sure, and all of that stuff. So, you know, like above ceiling is a great example. Like we have that form built out where you can just simply pull it up where I am, what I'm doing, and then take pictures and document. So even for your third party people that are coming through, which is just notorious, right? When the Joint Commission comes walking through and you find that spot that isn't firecocked because no one documented whether they did or not. So just to have that requirement, you have to fill out the form. It's real easy to get to, guys. And then just take a picture of the work when it's done and it's documented. And you can even take a picture of the product you use too, which is really makes those guys happy. I use this product and there is where I put it, you know, so access to all of that documentation, keep you in compliance, I think is a big piece of what we're going to add to.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was going to mention, Jeff, is thinking more from the the supervisor management side, how can and I don't have the answers to this yet, but I'm sure we'll be discussing it. How can Q help the managers and pass on their knowledge to the next layer of managers in healthcare? It's the facility engineering or management group is a small group, a small world. And a lot of people that step into it, like myself, had no previous training. How can I best prepare the people that are going to replace me and my colleagues so that when they come to our facility, they feel comfortable, not only because they have a lot of technicians that are trained very well and understand what to do, but they kind of have a feel for some of the processes and procedures that we do as leaders for our department. Again, still in development, but that's something that I'm looking forward to working on. One other thing I would mention for those like Joe and I in healthcare, and probably Bryce also, is we have so much regulation and compliance. So we have software for preventive maintenance work orders and stuff like that. But I think in discussions with Ed and Jeff, for those that might be out there, if you don't have that preventive maintenance work order system established, I think Q would fit in for that. Now, we already have a different company that handles that. Healthcare's had that, has to use those systems for decades, but for say commercial office buildings or something like that, it really in the long term helps the equipment stay in running condition, so you have less catastrophic breakdowns because you're regularly taking care of equipment based on your barcode and what your regular maintenance should be. I think that's something that other industries that don't already have it should be looking into.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. For preventative maintenance, Seneca, I mean, if some plants even really have a good detailed program, but like for us, we basically have an Excel spreadsheet, right? You know, part asset number was checked on this date and needs to be replaced on this date. I mean, it's very, very basic. We kind of set it and forget it. We kind of just say, hey, look, OSHA or regulatory company, we have a preventative maintenance plan. Don't give us a non-conformity for it. But there is a lot of valuable data that can be captured in a properly oriented preventative maintenance plan. Something for like us on the presses, we can run press tooling for upwards of 10 to 15 years without having to change it over. But if we don't have the data that says, hey, at year 8 or 9, you're starting to kind of get on that red line of where you're going to start impacting your final specification of your end or your can or whatever it may be. If we don't have that information and we can't make that decision or make that call to justify buying, $60,000-$70,000 worth of equipment changeover parts or more, then it's just, we're just saying, oh, we're going to wait until something fails, and then we start to get into an even bigger regulatory compliance issue. Why didn't we change this sooner? What's the lacking in your preventative maintenance program and all that? So I think QModo just in and of itself can provide a lot of preventative maintenance strategies and benefits when it comes to algorithms and data collection and all that. So
yeah, we've talked, and as kind of I'll pose this kind of as the last question. We talked a lot about capturing the information, and I think there, Bryce, you alluded to analyzing the information. And I know that some of you have started just to think about that and how you would analyze it, how QModo can help you potentially analyze it as we move forward. But let's spend a little bit of time just talking about that. And I know that, Joe, in some of the forms you're created, there are certain limits that are in there. There's certain data we're capturing that you want to analyze, that you need to report on. You want to talk a little bit about that and just expound on that?
So yeah, in its most simplistic form, we do our meter readings once daily, right? We read our water meter, our electric meter, and our gas meter daily. That was all paper kept, and then my assistant would have to go through monthly when the gas bill came in and see what their start and stop dates were on the bill, then go back into my 365 pages, find that date, find that meter reading, find the end of the month date, find that meter reading, and do the math. As we built the daily rounds form out, QModo was instrumental in building a report that now my assistant can just hit a button and her report comes up and she can set the dates and it'll bring up them meter readings for her and do the math, right? So we used this many CCF this month, and then she can compare it to the bill. So we started with that, and we're now expanding outward from there on what other reports can be pulled from this daily information. Bouncing way backwards on our conversation, regulatory will come in and want to see proof we did something, and we'll say we have it on QModo, and then they'll want to drill down. Having the ability to possibly build a report to just give them a brief picture, right here, we've been doing it, here it is, here's the dates. They can't then get us with a nonconformity. They can recommend we change it, but it saves on them nonconformities.
Yep. Well, thanks. Glenn, Bryce?
I'm trying to, I had a train of thought there and Joe kind of got me thinking about compliance and I got nervous again.
It was on the kind of the question around the
Hey,
analytics.
Glenn, while you're thinking about it, just know I came from Joint Commission every 3 years and I moved into DNV, which is every year.
Oh, so I should feel very happy and very lucky and fortunate then. All right. With the compliance part of it, I like that suggestion about taking a picture of it and using that for verification that you followed up on a work order. When we were talking about the ranges on the daily checks, one of the things that we're excited about is whenever you get out of those daily ranges, something's in it. There's going to be a flag that says, okay, the water temperature is not in the range that it's supposed to be. You could scald somebody. So we'll have that rather than waiting for the paper to be signed. And what if it gets left in a guy's locker and it doesn't get turned in till a day later? Immediately we'll have access to that information and we can make whatever necessary changes are to adjust that water temperature. That's just an example, but through the daily rounding and QModo setting up limits and alerts that happen when we get out of that, we're excited about using that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
Bryce, I know you're. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say on our end, we use a data archiving system. We call it WinSPC. I've notoriously said that if we really wanted to, that system could help us put a can on the moon. It is way too overboard in my opinion. I mean, the amount of data you can get out of it is okay, but the analytics that the potential analytics that we can run from it, they don't really give us that much information. I think that kind of intimidates some of our people from running that data, I guess, because one, they don't know what to do with it. Two, they don't know if it's the right data because there's so much that they can run and there's so many different ways to manipulate that data in that system. I like the fact that with QModo we can separate management from production, at least on our end. We need, as management, we need to organize the information that we're giving to our maintainers on the floor to better help them accomplish their job, right? The resources, the tools, the training that they need, being all in one place saves a lot of time. And if you say you just save 30 minutes a day, that's a whole week, maybe a week and a half that you're getting back somewhere in there, just in time, that in a whole year that you're not wasting trying to find all these forms and find the right data to pull. And if a QC manager is like, I need to know at these dates and I need to know these values, just having those already set up for them to say, okay, here you go, and then just they check off their list, they give us the information, we make the call, right? Having all those checks and balances in place for them is great. And then being able to organize, like what you guys were saying with compliance and auditing, we're beholden to OSHA, we're beholden to FDA, USDA, DNR, EPA, all these organizations that come in, they're going to audit us. Keeping all that stuff separate, none of our floor personnel need to actively, invest their time into those. That's for us as management to go through. If they want to see them, they're more than welcome to. But it's to declutter what they need to know and just give them a tunnel visioned approach to, this is what you guys need to know. If for whatever reason it's not there, come and tell us, and we can easily, reorganize it or upload it or whatever we need to do to give you guys a clear path for your job. Just eliminates any guessing work. And in an environment where they are constantly, pounded with production and quality and safety, and you don't want them to have to get sidetracked with, oh, how did we get this on an audit? It's like, okay, well, we can talk about that later. Right now we need to worry about production, keep everything in quality. We want to make sure that all of our preventative maintenance practices are being followed, because at the end of the day, that's gonna save us lots of cost to business. If we have out of specification or non-conforming product, all that has to be thrown away, or we have to find an alternative for it, and that's just extra work that we have to do to try to get something out of running poorly, really is what it is. And then over time, just having the data of how our operation shifts over the course of even like say 3 or 4 years, we can adjust our specs and fine tune them to a better nominal and a better running parameter that's better for us in the can manufacturing plant, and then as well as people in the cannery. If we can optimize both of those, and I won't get into the ridiculous details of seaming an end onto a can, but if we can make everybody's life easier on both ends of the spectrum, everything just runs smoother. And not having the data to be able to sift through to make those decisions is just really hard. Then you're kind of just shooting in the dark, right? So just having that information at your fingertips and saying, I want to know X, Y, and Z on a daily digest, and say, give me production records, give me quality holes, give me where we were running out of spec, and like Glenn was saying, the flags. Our managers can go through the flags and say, okay, well, why was night shift running really out of spec here? And then we can start investigating. So it gives us a lot of power to really see the full scope of everything going on.
Yeah.
No, great.
The one thing I want to add to, just real quick before we get off, that I think is just makes us so much different is, that's great that you get an alarm, or that's great that you know that the pressure is out of spec or the temperature is out of spec or whatever that might be. The one thing that Q has with that, when your guys are out there doing it, it's not only this is out of spec, this is how you fix it. It's sitting right next to it.
Yeah.
So that part of it, I know something is wrong, and here's what action I need you to take. I think that's really, really important on closing the loop.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, we're almost at the top of the hour here. If there's nothing else to comment, I want to thank you very much for you taking the time out of, I know all three of your busy schedules, to join us and be a part of this discussion. We truly appreciate it from the QModo family. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. We appreciate you all joining us.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Thanks,
All right,
everyone.
thank you. My pleasure.